This is Annie with Salttown Realty. It's the third Thursday of the month, which means we are doing our monthly interview. Tonight we are interviewing Dalton Condit. He is the owner of Domain, which is a design and building firm in town. So this is Dalton Condit. He's the owner of Domain, which is a builder and designer in town. And what I like to say about you is that once I went on your website for the first time, I realized that I feel like I've seen all of your builds in town. Like if you're around downtown Salt Lake and you see that 100-year-old house, but it's got this like cool modern flair to it, almost guaranteed Domain has done that. And that's what I love about you guys. I feel like your Salt Lake's like best kept secret. Um,
Thank
the
you.
other thing I promised you that I would say is that Domain is very, very busy. And so this is an interview to explain the process of building and get a little bit of background on Dalton and learn about him, but he's not necessarily taking new clients. I do have
Yeah.
other recommendations, and I'm sure that Dalton does too. And maybe if your project is down the road in 5 years, he might be around for it. But I did promise you that that I would make
Yeah.
sure that
Thank you.
you're a busy man. So why don't you give us a little intro on who you are, where you came from, how you got into building, etc.
So I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia. I went to TC Williams High School, which everybody kind of remembers. Well, I guess that name got removed, but from Remember the Titans.
Ah,
And I took drafting classes there all throughout high school, which then led me to go to architecture school at USC in LA. And I did 2 years of that and realized there was just no hands-on building experience at architecture school. And that's when I moved here to uh, snowboard, goof off for a couple years, and met my wife. My dad and brother eventually moved out here, and we just started a company out here, and we love it, and we call it home now. Salt Lake's
that's
a
so
beautiful
cool.
place.
And that was something that I learned recently. So Dalton just did, I sold some clients a house, and our worlds start getting really interconnected during this story because I had found you like a decade ago. I remember you came out to one of my properties.
Yeah.
And then later, a good friend of mine was like, "Oh, I have a great builder. You should call him." And you showed up, and we both went, "We've done this before." So we had already met and then re-met through that client. And
Yeah.
then I had some clients that were friends with that other friend who bought a house. And then I was like, "Oh, you've got to use this guy, Dalton." At the same time, their best friend, who's your good friend, also, and probably part of the company too.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then Dalton didn't know that I had sold the house that he was working on for those clients. So this is just like the small Lake City thing, right?
Small Lake City. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, doing an amazing. I still haven't seen the finished product of that house yet. But what I learned through it is that you are like you're the guy who also holds the hammer. Like I think it's easy enough for a contractor, a GC, to kind of go to the project, check it out. But they were like, "Oh no, all of like the important work, the finished work, Dalton is doing that specifically," which I just have such a I just think that's the coolest because that's not always the case with contractors.
Yeah, we do pretty much all the carpentry work on our own job. So
Yeah.
laying out the floor plans, fine tuning floor plans, anything that has to do with wood and saws, we do it usually
Yeah,
hands on. So
that's so cool.
yeah,
So I don't actually know like what your team is like. And sorry, I'm kind of jumping this question on you. I didn't send it to you earlier, but
that's
like
fine.
what is your team? Like how many guys do you employ? Do you have an architect that you work with specifically? Like tell me about Domain specifically.
So we do a lot of the preliminary design ourselves, and then we employ architects or draftsmen to actually create blueprints on larger scale projects. But we generally come up with a design, and we'll give an architect a Google SketchUp is what we use, a 3D model to scale. This is what we envision. Let's just get this on a piece of paper. Um, so we've worked with a number of architects, have good relationships with a bunch of them. Certain projects just come with a certain architect. Like the one we're doing now, we bought a lot and it already had plans, so we just used the architect that had drawn those plans. But yeah, we've used a number of them in town, and they're all good and good points of resource. And getting an architect who really is budget minded is super important in the construction process. So And then on our team, it's just me and my wife. My wife does all the bookkeeping for us and a lot of the design. And John Kramer is my partner. He's hands-on also, and yeah, it's a small crew, and we have some pretty good reliable subs that we've used throughout the years, and I've had good luck with, and that's just kind of how we do things.
Oh, that's so cool. That's actually, I hadn't thought about that. A great, I know a couple of architects, but for some projects, I don't think that mine are necessarily always like the best choice for that. So you
Hmm.
would probably be a great resource for some architects in town as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's some good ones. We've had good luck. We actually built one of the local architects, a guy named Dave Brock in town, Brock
Mhm.
Design. He picked us to build his house for him, which
Oh,
I
cool.
thought was an honor. So
For sure. It's very flattering when the people that you work with choose you too. I've sold houses to my sewer line scope guy and my inspector, and that like I was like, oh no, sorry, my roofer. And I was like, oh man, that's like the greatest honor because those guys know 100 realtors, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, I love that. So I know what makes you unique as a builder, but how would you put it? Like what sets you apart?
I think we really pride ourselves on, since we've done a lot of our work, at least half of it has been spec homes throughout town, and you
Mhm.
mentioned that earlier. So we really know where to get the best value for your dollar. Obviously, you want features in a house that really stand out, but you don't want to overspend on other features. And I think we're really good about pointing those out and keeping a good eye on
Yeah,
budget throughout the course of construction.
yeah,
And we've always built everything with the intent of our spec homes that we might not be able to sell this, so we might have to move into it. So that's kind of our motto. So,
yeah.
and we've been fortunate, and Salt Lake has been an amazing housing market. As a real estate agent over the past years, we've got a little downtick right now, but all in all, I think Salt Lake is just a great place to invest in real estate.
I
So,
completely agree. And I would say even now,
yeah,
it still remains that way.
yeah.
Um, so if somebody has aspirations to, do a big job, and I can't stress enough, like the scale of the jobs that you do, like truly like to the studs. I mean, that client that we were just talking about, they moved
Yeah.
walls and stairways and everything, like completely different layout, basically. So if somebody is thinking about doing a massive job like that, what's the process for that? Like when would you get involved? What should they be thinking about?
We're generally too busy to do the design for other clients, so we usually steer that to an architect. But I like to be involved and be in the discussion, so I can pinpoint the big costs and where you can save money and where you should spend money, and the costs that are just fixed, foundation costs, concrete costs. But a lot of the big factors are, the sky's the limit on window packages, flooring types, and it's really, people can get carried away with that. And I think it's important to have a builder who can really like point out like, hey, you don't need to spend that much money to get that type of effect, and I think that's
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
So,
yeah, I completely agree. I am so guilty of that in past projects that I've done where I go, oh yeah, no, I want it like this. And then I sort of, oh, but that tile's nice and
yeah,
that's a really nice fixture. And then before I know it, I'm like,
yeah,
wait, why is this costing so much? Oh yeah, it's my fault entirely.
yeah. It's only a little bit more, but when you do it across the board on every aspect of the house, it starts adding up really quick.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no doubt. Kelly Favera is an agent in my office and apparently knows you too. He said Dalton was really
yeah,
great to work with. He built my last house and remodeled my current place. So that's
yeah, that's
another
it.
another small Lake City thing there.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some things that people should be asking builders, to like determine if they're going to be a good fit, and or like what expectations should they have out of a builder?
Um, I I don't know. I think it's important to have a builder who's actually hands-on, is going to be available during the course of construction.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of builders and contractors who are strictly, we call them paper contractors, where it's
Mm,
all phone calls, and they're not hands-on site
yeah.
and fix. I mean, you're going to have problems every day throughout the course of construction. It's how they handle that and keep things on the right track is the important um, thing out of a builder, and just being available and being able to answer questions and sometimes talk you off a ledge. So
I think I think your job and real estate can be a lot of psychology as well, of just keeping like nerves calm and making sure that people are feeling good at what they're doing. Oh, yeah, I think maybe you froze for a second there.
no, I got a call. So anyway,
Oh, okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, it's important to just have a builder that you have a good communication with, and is really thinking about your overall experience and how much money you're going to spend on it. Like I said, you can really get carried away with some of these construction items,
Hmm.
and it's important for a builder to really keep that in mind. And if
Hmm.
they don't have that in mind, you might want to just maybe talk to somebody else. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you mind sharing? You and I have talked about it a couple times, and I should have asked you beforehand, but you have some general guidelines for remodels and for new builds in terms of price per square foot. Do you mind sharing that since you're
I
busy anyway?
I really hate to
Yeah,
do that in this market because we've really everything's kind of been going up over the past couple of years and it's starting
yeah,
to settle down a little bit. But I would, in terms of cost of new construction, I mean, I wouldn't expect to pay any less than about 190 to $200 a square foot,
okay,
and you could go up to 4 to 450 for really nice stuff, depending on where you're building and the scale of the
yeah,
project. How steep is the lot? What variables do you have?
yeah,
So it's really hard, and then what finishes you have. So I mean, that's where I kind of say you need to talk to uh, an architect who has your budget in mind and a builder who has your budget in mind.
yeah,
Um, but then remodels, I mean, if you're not really doing any major structural work to the exterior, I think it's fair to say you'd be in between like $175 a square foot
okay.
for a
Yeah,
whole house remodel.
I think
And
that,
those are just kind of rule of thumb. I mean,
yeah,
I tell that to real estate agents when people are talking about buying houses but it needs this
yeah.
much work. So I kind of say, don't expect to spend less than that.
Yeah.
So
And that's why I like to have, I had your figures from a few years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, like in my phone. And anytime I'm showing a house and somebody's talking about doing big renovations, I go, I know this guy. He kind of threw out these numbers one time. They're kind of old, but I think it's nice for people just to have like a general idea,
yeah,
And so just the big disclaimer is like, these are not final numbers. These are a
yeah,
general idea, and it depends on what's happening in the world and the economy and things change prices. So don't, take that home.
yeah, yeah.
But I think people will enjoy having like a little general guidelines for that.
Yeah, and
Um,
generally it's more than they think. A lot of people think, like, hey, I can redo this kitchen for X amount of dollars, and they call a contractor or somebody like that, and they're like, no,
yeah,
add a zero,
yeah,
kind of stuff. So
yeah, exactly. And a contractor, I mean, I've had them show up where I'm like, the number you just gave me just tells me that you really don't want to do this job. Actually, if you're getting three bids from people,
yeah,
you can tell the ones that are like, yeah, I have no interest in this job because the bid reflects that.
yeah, and I think that's
So
what's good about picking a good contractor is usually they have pretty good relationships with their subs
mhm.
that they've been using for multiple jobs over the years. And I think they can kind of estimate what the sub's going to be, and you're not getting ripped off, I guess is
Yeah,
a good word for it.
yeah, no, that's important. Any kind of last advice or thoughts that you'd want to share with people that are thinking about building or doing big renovations?
You're depending on which city you're working in. I mean, most of my work is in Salt Lake City, and it never surprises me how long it takes from the day you have a project, whether it's buying a lot or buying a house and you need to remodel it, getting the architect drawings, which includes all the structural engineering, if you have to do surveys, all of that stuff is just time consuming. And then just the overall permitting process, you want to allocate at least, probably 6 months to a year just in that
Oh,
aspect.
wow.
And that's assuming that you're making quick decisions with an architect, so hey, we need to have these decisions made and to keep the ball rolling, whereas
Yeah,
weeks can go in, you get tied in with work and you're not focused on your house, and then all of a sudden it just starts dragging on and on and on. And then the city, with permit fees and how long they take, it's pretty time consuming. I always underestimate it. and I've been doing this for 20 years now. So,
Yeah.
so they always hit me with another permit fee every year I go to do a new spec home or
Oh,
something like that.
wow.
So,
Yeah.
the city definitely gets their fair share of the booming housing economy in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, no doubt. No, that's good to know. I'm looking into building a kind of freestanding ADU in the back of one of my properties. And so that's good advice for me as well, because it would be just like a completely ground up project.
What hurdles have you run into
So
doing
I
that?
I've barely started. I've truly barely started. I just talked to a builder a couple weeks ago. It's right around the corner from the places you just built on the west side.
Uh-huh.
I think I told you I've got a
Yeah.
property over there, and it's a massive
Uh-huh.
lot. But supposedly this builder, he did some work for some clients of mine, and they had raving reviews. They thought he was just great, and so he seems like he'd be a good option because you're not available for it.
But
It seems like
how has it been getting through the city? Have you gotten that far
hasn't
yet? Like getting
not
permits and
even.
plans?
No,
Not even
have
that
not.
far yet. Yeah.
It's literally brand new. So yeah, I might be calling you for advice
Well,
if I need
I'm
to.
glad to help.
You're like, is this normal? Is this
But I
should
know the city has relaxed their laws on ADUs, and I think it's good because housing prices have gotten so expensive here in Salt Lake that
yeah,
it's it gives people more affordable options,
yeah,
and people can subsidize these higher mortgages they're paying to get some rental income out of these, or
exactly.
traditional mother-in-law casitas they call them down south.
Yeah.
So um, I think it's good. I think Salt Lake is moving in the right direction with that. So
Yeah, I think so too. In fact, in my office the other day, we just had one of the guys from the city who's sort of in charge of that come and talk to us at our team meeting. And it was pretty interesting. And they do have like really specific guidelines. So if you're like, I can fulfill these exact guidelines, and I can theoretically just plop the structure here and it should be like fairly easy. I have
yeah,
some clients right now who are adding one to their basement, added a walkout, and they've learned a lot. But he said all in all, it's gone fairly smooth getting it
yeah.
all approved. So.
One of the big
Um,
hurdles is getting public utilities, sewer lines. Sewer
yeah,
lines are the big thing to like a detached garage in the rear yard. I know
yeah,
that discourages a lot of people because it gets really expensive to make that happen.
yeah. It's a lot of digging. Hey, we've got a quick question.
Hmm.
Where do you get your ideas for your builds?
Uh, Mostly, my wife and I had a pretty extensive magazine collection over the past years before, the internet and, all these Pinterests and houses and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It was a lot of magazine reading, and yeah, my wife has a great eye for that kind of stuff, and it's just all stuff we've seen and want to do later.
favorite magazine. We'll end there.
We were big fans of Dwell for a while, and then Houses magazine, which I think was out of Australia. They always have some really cool building products down in Australia.
Okay,
And then my wife really liked Elle Decor.
cool.
Um, and we still have the old ones. So if everything has a cycle, so maybe 5, 10 years from now, we can go back and pull
Yeah,
some design ideas from 10 years
yeah,
before. So
yeah. Seriously, I love that. Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor
yeah,
chatting
my
with you.
pleasure.
I appreciate you being on my show here. And if you guys want to check out Dalton's Builds domain, slc.com is his website. You can also follow me, post some stuff. And believe me, if you look at that website, you'll be like, I've seen all these houses around town because they're all very eye-catching. So
Yeah,
yeah, thanks so much again and have a great night.
yeah. Thanks for having me. See you,
Yeah,
Annie.
bye.